What I'd like to do for the next 30 minutes or so is just share some stories about what may seem fairly disheveled journey as an educator. And I've had the real privilege of seeing a spectrum. You know, in 12, 15 years, it's been wonderful to be an elementary school teacher, a high school teacher, to have worked with non-formal education organizations and the Arctic and Antarctic experiences, as well as through EYES Project, just working with schools and teachers and administrators and communities to get environmental learning initiatives up and off the ground. And how do we build community, and what does that mean? And as I spent a few hours earlier this week just putting some thoughts together, I thought, you know, looking over, rarely do we stop to pause and, you know, just to have a look at those 12 years and what's jumped out at me. And two things, you know, I think jumped out when I paused there. And one was that when I think of, you know, my experiences over the last 12 years and as an educator and at the time of history we are in, you know, there's two remarkable developments underway right now. And one of them is there's the appearance of systemic problems that are genuinely global in scope. So whether that's ecological issues that we're facing or sociocultural or economic, we realize that we are seeing some really real challenges now. And I think at the same time, there's another development emerging, and that's a mobilization of people on the ground around the world working in community to make positive change. And not that that hasn't happened historically for time immemorial, but I think the rate and the ability to unite, you know, through internet and through various means of today's technology is really creating a grassroots movement towards change. And it's these two parallel movements that, for me as an educator, I'm drawn to. I think my career has been built around trying to chase those two ideas. And I think the second thing that jumped out at me is just the unpredictability of career and life paths. And, you know, I think back to 1994. I'd finished my undergrad degree at Dalhousie, threw the backpack on like most lost early 20-something people, and took off and did an 80-day trek across Nepal. And I can remember specifically this day, coming down over the Thronglor Pass, and I met a Nepalese elder in the home I was staying that night, and he said, "Let me guess, you're here to find yourself like every other young person." It's like, how did you know? And as we started to chat, he said, "Well, what's the dilemma? What are you here to decide?" I said, you know, essentially life path. You know, I've got a set of parents who I love dearly and who've had a wonderful relationship with, and who are, you know, trying to push me towards a career in medicine. You know, just expectations in society. If you do this in school or you've achieved this, off you go. He said, obviously you're not too excited about that road. What is it you love? What is it you're passionate about? I want to work with young people. I want to chase ideas and possibilities. I wanted to explore places and use places like this as the classroom. It's like, well, it doesn't sound like you have to look too much further, you know, and the road as a teacher began that day, which was neat. So what I'd like to do today is I'm going to frame it around 5 or 6 different stories and focus on 2 things. And those 2 things are leadership through relationship. And how do we mobilize ideas and mobilize people around ideas, issues, challenges, and how do we engender that sense of agency in people? And the second thing to talk about is the role that youth play in that leadership for change. And that's what I'll end on. But let's head up to the Arctic to start off. And so this was a journey in 2006 where we took 20 high school students from around the world to the Arctic. And we had a team of 4 or 5 educators, historians, scientists. And we went up to a small community at the tip of Baffin Island called Pond Inlet. And from there we went 60 miles by Skidoo and Comatic across the frozen ocean to a place called the Flow Edge. And that's where the open ocean where the ice meets the open ocean. And as you're moving across the landscape, I mean, the Arctic really is, I think, part of the Canadian fabric. And we often say coast to coast, and we forget, you know, that entire third coastline that so much defines who we are. And as you're moving across the landscape, you think of the words of Hugh Brody and just some of the writings, the rich writings of our north. And it's true. It is awe-evoking. It's beautiful. It's just so open. And when we get up there to the Flow Edge, the goal of the program is to have the students working alongside scientists and educators who are conducting actual research. And so a group's off with the students, and they're doing, you know, migratory bird surveys. Another group might be off with a glaciologist doing ice core sampling. Another group might be with marine biologists putting underwater sonar in and listening to the different wildlife passing by. And this took place early in June, and it's a great time to be up there when the migratory season's begun, and we have beluga whales and thick-billed murres moving by, and so a very dynamic time. And the story I'd like to share with you was on the second last day that we were camped out here on the ice, and this is our setup. And Pan Wheelie, one of the Inuit guides that were with us on the ice, a man of very few words, woke us all up around 6 a.m. knocking on the tent saying, you know, wake up, wake up. And when Pan Wheelie spoke, everyone listened. And so we woke up and he said, in the next hour we have to break up camp and be out of here. No questions were asked. We just disassembled camp, got on the skidoos, 60 miles back to Pond Inlet. And when we finally had a chance to unpack and just ask Pan Wheelie, why, what's up? He said, by noon tomorrow, all the ice will be gone. And by 11:30 the next morning, 60 miles of ice all through the inlet were gone. And so that afternoon, we sat down with Pan Wheelie and we brought in elders from the community and had a chance just to sit and talk. And what was remarkable with that experience, you know, for the students and educators alike, you know, I think three things jumped out. One is just the notion that I think we tend to look at science as the way of knowing, the way of understanding and understanding the natural and the physical ways of life and how things work. And I think what the young people and old people together realized is that there's another way of knowing. There's multiple ways of knowing. And they just witnessed that. You know, that traditional ecological knowledge or that vernacular knowledge of place. You know, and the kids asked, how did you know that, Pan Wheelie? And he said the combination of the leads starting, the cracks in the ice starting to opening up over the last couple days and the shift in winds, he knew that within 24 hours we'd be without an ice surface to stand on. So I think just that knowledge was really profound for the young people to witness. I think the second thing that was really remarkable was that, you know, it made climate change, the issue of climate change, something that's so ubiquitous in news and media and what have you, real and tangible. They saw a changing landscape, and they lived it. And I think, you know, as the debriefing and just a chance to reflect started to take place, you know, they realized that it's not just the science of climate change and computer models and kind of a distant type issue. It's actually, there's a human face to it.